Hello everybody, I'm Sarah Tremlett. I'm a poetry filmmaker, poet and theorist, and author of the Poetics of Poetry film, which is available from Intellect Books and the University of Chicago Press. I'm very happy to be part of Lyra this year. Last year, Liberated Words ran the poetry film and the environment at the Arnolfini. And previously, I have co-organised Liberated Words festivals at the Arnolfini in 2013 and 2014 when it was a 3-day event. And actually, I was commissioned to both curate a screening and run a discussion on poetry, film and form for encounters in that year. Today, as we enter the second year of COVID, Lyra has come up with the theme of reconnection. And rather than think about what the glorious moments we're going to have now of getting back and in touch with each other and going outside, I decided to think about how we were reconnecting during COVID, during the worst moments of lockdown. And I know that for many, looking back at photograph albums, online, and looking at family history became something that kept us going and in fact helped us to focus on exactly who we are. And as such, I would like to introduce a selection of poetry films which are called family history poetry films, and I have sort of identified that subject during my research, and a couple are actually in the book. Another reason for me doing this is that I've been researching my own ancestors for the last 25 years, and it has become a project called Tree, comprising prose poetry and poetry film. My ancestors were farmers, they worked the land, they ran paper mills and were miners, and so my work focuses on the geopoetics of place. And during lockdown, I actually managed to take one visit down to Cornwall, where one of the films is in fact set. So here are 5 examples of family history poetry films. The first 4 were created during COVID last year, and each one tells the story of working remotely as much as it does the family history narrative. Bird Poem focuses on the historical present, Lievito Madre on an old man's memories, Firewash on connecting with a medieval ancestor, and Bloodlines on a Gypsy and Traveller heritage. Muirburn, the last film, centres on the death of a father, and really illustrates what an accomplished filmmaker and poet can achieve together.
Feathers always fascinated us. Long before this beaded bird perched crimson by our bedside, we shared a scarlet boa, shed glamour over bolding festive fields, feathers plucked, like daisies scattering she loves me's to the wind. Next morning, lying phoenix bright, you wrapped me in insignia of freedom, your shoulder feather inked and coiled for flight. 1,000 meters and a year away I would propose, a rose gold feather beating in my palm. Then feathers framed our wedding rings and perched upon my stocking Christmas Eve. Each Advent since a new bird roosts for me, and one by one we fly them to our tree. There are tiny hands to help us now, grown bigger with each flight. Our adhesive boy, who stuck me back together when I shattered, whose favourite colour's rainbow. Our impossible boy, who flies 100 miles for every one we walk. My ruby bird no longer joins the flock. He is winged,
in the spring
unthreading
of
in his multi-boa nest.
I worked
we are
virtually
now as well,
on a family history
have lived
poetry
through
film
loss and judgment.
with the poet and academic Helen Johnson
There
from
are
Brighton
days in
University.
which we skip staccato stutters.
I asked her if she would like
anxious
to
fast.
make a film on this subject.
Others where we couldn't move at all.
I gave her
Songs
the opportunity to
in our
find an
mouths.
object that was significant for her.
But we are stronger than 1,000
And
coddled
she came up with a bird
city pigeons,
that
clubfoot
appeared on
dancing
the
on
Christmas
the
tree
eaves.
every year.
Chasing feral thermals through the leaves.
She was open to
If you watch
writing
us
a
close
poem
where
on this
sunlight
subject,
plays,
and we worked back
You'll
and
see
forth.
we're far from gutter
And
grey.
in fact, she
We've
actually
throats
did
of
some of the
silver,
filming herself
amethyst or
because
jade.
certain
Our
things were
wingtips,
relevant,
diamond
could
shade.
only be filmed by her.
1,000 meters
And
and a year
I
away.
created the rest
You
of the
wrapped
film,
me in insignia of
selected
freedom.
images and the music,
A rose gold feather.
and
beating
we
my
completed the film together in this way. In Lia Vita Madre, in 2020, during the first period of COVID restrictions, the Italian directors Francesco Garbo, who was based in Marseille, and Pierluigi Muscolino, based in Berlin, shot and produced the short film Lia Vita Madre, which means mother doe. They were working remotely with each other and an actor, both in writing and in realisation. The voiceover is also in the dialect of the Trieste area rather than in Italian. In this film, an 80-year-old man who is stuck in quarantine relives the memories of his youth, and triggered by the familiar scent of bread baking, he travels back in time and rediscovers the simple pleasures of his childhood, which are all the more poignant set against being forced to emigrate and leave his home. In 1945, Italy had to surrender Julian, Venetia and Dalmatia to Yugoslavia. The local inhabitants then became refugees in Italy. So this film, though, often focuses on small yet important kitchen objects, although we see photographs of the war situation. But mainly it is how baking became a force, a talisman against the danger that was all around.
ognidunque i profumi della sua infanzia. Per me sicuramente il profumo delle scarpette dopo aver giocato a ballon sul campo del Chiarbola e l'odore del panificio del mio papà. Sono cresciuto in una famiglia di panettieri. Mio papà, mio nonno. Go passato giornate intere nel panificio dei miei genitori. De piccio, mio papà mi lasciava solo grattare il pan duro per i porchi dei grabelli. Mi piaceva assai fraccar tutti quei panini secchi quasi immuffidi dentro quel tubo di plastica che faceva un rumor tremendo. Mi ricordo come fossi ieri il giorno che il megà finalmente lasciò adoprare il stampin per le rosette. Più forte, che se no non le vien, non ti abbraccio ti, rideva lui. Ma la vita gira sempre. La panetteria ha chiuso. Trieste è diventata Italia e noi siamo andati in Germania a raggiungere zio. Adesso che ho 80 anni, sono di nuovo in quarantena. Come nel 47, quando che se morivai de Pola. Come se non ti avessi già vissuto abbastanza. Una guerra, un esodo, un esilio. La farina è sempre il doppio dell'acqua. E go comincia a impastar col palmo, come papà. Se ti gazzonti un cucciar di miel e ti la fa riposare, ti fa il lievito madre. Go impastà per 10, forse 20 minuti, fino a sentir male in le mani. Non so neanche perché lo abbia fatto. Non so fare il pan. Allora l'ho messo in frigo, in un barattolo. Stamattina ho verto quel barattolo e go sentì quell'odor de 60 anni fa. L'acido dolce del lievito madre, l'odor della panetteria, l'odor di mio papà, l'odor della mia infanzia.
In Firewash, my poetry film and my poem, it arrived as a conversation with an ancestor who mined in Cornwall in the 12th century at a location where there was manganese. I've been lucky enough to be able to stay at some of the sites in my research, and this one was a shepherd's hut which I stayed in during a gale in October. So this film is an audio-visual response to identity and place, and I had an idea for the poem originally, but much of it has just taken on its own life. I didn't start out with a fully formed concept, and in some ways I really didn't know where the words came from. I am driven down, though limp from the shadow side, to the shepherd's hut by the lake, dug from springs for the farmer's son. A storm is coming. It is you, soul tossing and turning, compassing the leadening tool, buffeting the family stone circle. My system eye slowly undoes to natural language, scanning ditch, stream, rock, ore. Stardust to bone, stone to dust, shafts of rain descend. Below, the black hum of picks meet leaping manganese bison from Neanderthal caves. You rumble signs, windlass, prospector. See where the adit must cut, how deep the vein where a warm seam runs wet in a hoarfrost. Or fungus grows, and blackened leaves hang from trees. Rising colander springs send messages, lift ore, polished rolling far, rough falling close by, finding fist's pocket, rub stone. Finger to mouth we taste silomelane, magic dark light merlinite, wash in the jewel fire of pyrolusite that is both uplifted in glassmakers' hands, stained amethyst or liquid rose for chapel, or brandished in clenched warrior fist, the hardest manganese steel. Which economics did you choose? Taming God or invincible sword, for Spartan, Viking, or Cornish king? Miner, iron smelter, maker of legends or dreams? You bang doors, but I push open windows, fix on the opaque spiking lake, a scrying soul conjuring fire from water. All my stones safe under the bed, like a healing madman tethered by the mystic veil, as you fall still against drying rain, uncanny under the drowsy pond, brim shimmering. In Bloodlines, the poetry film by poet Sarah Wimbush was a completely new departure for her, working with young filmmaker Isabel Turner. It's based on the poem of the same name, which won second prize at Lyra Poetry Festival in 2019. Her pamphlet also takes the name of the title poem. She says, Bloodlines is about identity, the excitement of being plural, and the wonder of having traveller heritage. And really the understanding she has just enough information to appreciate what that means, and yet not actually be part of that community. She says the poem draws on things she knows to be true, of names and places, the bare bones of how a family lived on the road 100 years ago. And even though gypsies and travellers were still marginalised, they were still very much part of the rural community, travelling to the next field or town for work.
In the Bloodlines, there's a hooped earring. In the Bloodlines, there's an open Vardo door, Ramsons on the other side. Songs and seasons wave at you from the Bloodlines. Action towns watch you fly. In the Bloodlines, there's an acorn of swagger that inflates into a barrel wearing a vest. In the Bloodlines, there is nothing to offer up to the old world except a pair of chamois booties. Your past, their past. Bloodlines stare, bemused by the chant of tables, a company car, lunch. Bloodlines hoik slingshots at woodcock and snipe. Damp earth is a must as you lie with the Bloodlines. Some scratch the name of the wind into elm with a crochet hook. Others chaw lollipops from children. Bloodlines can't hear you, but they follow you in a handful of photographs and crumpled vowels, the shortening clay pipe, gorge folky. In the Bloodlines, you make yourself make steamed pudding, then eat salad. In the Bloodlines, there's a long blue thread. In the Lee and the Lanes, there must be someone who can tell you about the Bloodlines, about the rhythm of your tongue, your flying fox glare, the need to set curtains ajar at night. What are you searching for in the darkness? Why are you? And yet, it's the Bloodlines that murmur on the Barvel, Bloodlines that understand the spell of a campfire, your attraction to gold. How if I shook my pale face from gullet to hairline, the world would turn scarlet, and all that pours out will be road.
In Muirburn, poet Yvonne Reddick tells us this extraordinary story of how she scattered her father's ashes on a hillside, and it is brought to life through Helmy Still's condensed and dreamlike filmmaking. While others depict their memories of their father alive and perhaps in a particular situation, whilst Yvonne does reference that, here we're really centering on our embodied condition, how we are born and ultimately we die. The first line, "My father weighed a little less than at birth," is one of the most arresting that I can think of. And even if you didn't know the subject, you could guess through that one line where the narrative might be going. Of course, it speaks of the unthinkable. You are holding a man who maybe once held you, and yet she delivers it in a steady manner. She doesn't wallow, but goes to the heart of the moment. It's the materiality of existence, yet told within a dream, and the magnified pupil of an eye. So we see hands scattering ashes of the wood and the hillside, and fire itself knits it all together. The smell of the ashes of a match being lit, of her father building a bonfire, and of fire beaters on the moor. She says, to these elementals we return. The body in the land and the body of the person she has known all her life become indistinguishable.
My father weighed a little less than at birth. I carried him in both hands to the pines as October brought the burning season. When I unscrewed the urn, bone chaff and grit streamed out with their gunpowder smell. I remembered the sulphur hiss of the match, how he taught me to breathe on the steeple of logs until the kindling caught and flames quickened. That night in sleep I saw the forest clearing by the moor's edge and the ring of his ashes. A skirl of smoke began to rise, bracken curling, a fume of blaeberry leaves. Ants broke their ranks to scatter and flee, and a moth spun ahead of the fire wind. I took the path over the heath at a run. A voice at my shoulder said, "You'll inherit fire." And through the smoke I glimpsed a line of figures on the hillside, beating and beating the heather as the fire front roared towards them. A volley of shouts, "Keep the wind at your back!" My grandmother threshing with a fire broom, Dad hacking a fire break. My stillborn brother, now grown, sprinting for the hollow where the spring once flowed, the whole hill flaring in the updraft. And there, a girl, running for the riverside. She wore my face, the shade of ash.
I hope you enjoyed these different approaches to family history poetry film. And I find them really fascinating in that, in a sense, they are autobiographical. They touch in areas that really expand on our sense of selves and arose really out of lockdown. So we have looked inside ourselves to see further who we actually are. If you actually would like to recommend any or would like to get in touch with me on this subject, please do email me at Liberated Words, and I'll be really happy to discuss it further. So once again, thank you very much, Lyra, for the opportunity of showing these films. Thank you.